Welcome to the Into Novus Knowledge Agronomy Podcast, your go-to resource for agronomic insights, technology solutions, and ongoing education. At Into, we combine agronomic expertise from soil analysis to best practice application methodologies to provide a holistic view for your yield optimization. Our focus is on practical strategies that improve efficiency and drive better results in the field. Join us for interesting discussions, expert advice, and the latest advancements shaping modern agriculture. Whether you're in the field, on the road, or at your facility, we're here to keep you informed ahead of the curve. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Welcome to the Into podcast. Today, joined with my counterparts, Rodney Phelps in Illinois and Derek Cottrill, Northwest Missouri. How you guys doing?
Good,
Nick.
Guys, if we just want to start off, I know there's a little bit of differences amongst us as far as progress. So if we maybe want to start with Rodney, work our way over to Derek, and then I can finish up.
sure. So we're in kind of a weather holding pattern. We're wet. Doesn't sound like we're as wet as maybe Derek is, but we've been getting, quarter inch to half inch pretty regularly, and so now we're, as far as crop progress, I would say very nil. Some early planted beans that guys stuck in, and when I say a 40 here, a 40 there, so nothing, no major acres, they're out of the ground. I was talking to one of the guys yesterday that was able to run some chemistry on sand, but we have a limited amount of that. So we're in one of those springs that just about when you think it's okay, we can get something done, we dump another quarter or a third of an inch of rain and it's wet again. So we're looking probably, the 25th of the month, and I hate to put a date on it because that could all change. But right now we're 10 days out from really, really dropping the flag and getting things going.
Yeah, like Rodney mentioned, we're awful wet at the moment. We got a decent amount of crop that went in very into March and early April there, and we were so dry. The rain that we got this past weekend got soaked up pretty quick, but I had areas getting anywhere from an inch to, I saw up to 2 inches in some places around that Albany, Stanberry area. So that slowed everybody down, and getting rain this morning, tonight maybe, and again Friday. So like Rodney said, we're kind of in that weather holding pattern just a little bit. Now I'm not concerned right now with the crop that's been put into the ground at this point before all this rain came. But I would just, like Rodney put a date on it. I can't put a date on it, but no need to rush back in at this point either and make sure conditions are fit. But we're still probably like Rodney, several days out from really dropping it hard and going hard. So
Appreciate it, Derek. Rodney. For me, it's kind of a tale of two different areas. So not quite the same as you guys. And last year, I was the odd one that was wet for quite a while. This year, it's kind of different in central Missouri, whether you're kind of west central or you're east central. And to the west, normally is typically always drier. It seems like most years, but this year has been wetter. And on the east side of the geography, yeah, there was people planting still yesterday. This morning, there's a little bit of sprinkling going on, and depending on what happens tonight, whether they'll be shut down for a couple of days or not, and then yeah, good chances of rain on Friday. But some stuff being done to the east, to the west, not so much. There was a little bit of early stuff planted, and that those corn and those beans are pretty much out of the ground for the guys that were off to they're like around the 20th or so of March. That stuff is up, looks good, and even through kind of the 24th, 25th. So some crop up that was planted early, but problem is just not a lot planted in general. And now from what's been planted, most of that is on the east side of the geography. So kind of like you guys, a little bit of a holding pattern, but I think we're closer than what you guys are to rolling. And then wheat crop, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, man, it is blowing through the growth stages well ahead of normal. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. I guess I'll reemphasize too a little bit what Derek kind of alluded to. It is, a lot of people want to panic per se just because the last couple of years we've been so spoiled to get things in. Um, Although my geography, especially to the east side, we had a lot of May planted corn last year, but um, yeah, just good to be patient. We're not late by any means yet. Some cases it feels like it, but on the average, we're not. And no need to do anything uncomfortable just yet. With that said, guys, just there's several things that we could talk about today. I guess one of the things on our mind, just a little bit of a pest update. And I think if we're going to talk about pests, probably the biggest thing or hottest topic right now to me is probably weed control. And Derek, I know you've got some experiences up there. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about, especially when it comes to the burn down, winter annual type things. So I'm going to let you kick it off.
Yeah, as far as concerns that I have right now, from what I'm seeing just driving across my territory over the last week or so, it is primarily weed control. I'm not these rains and all the moisture that we're getting. For the most part, we probably needed it, and with our temperatures we've been getting, I'm not too worried. Like I said a minute ago, not too worried about the crop that's already been put in the ground. But one thing I've been noticing is a lot of that crop that got put in, there was some, no-till situations where we're planting into winter annuals and things like that, and then the rain came and we can't get across it with the sprayer, and we're gonna have to start getting pretty aggressive with our burn down herbicides that have if they haven't taken place yet. I realize some of the fields that I'm seeing that are really greened up with weeds might get hit with tillage, but those that are still not, or that might even have crop up at this point, are pretty quick. And those winter annuals now are getting to the point where they're going to be pretty aggressive and tough to kill. And at this point, can't afford to be skimping on things like rates, whether that be of the herbicide or even adjuvants are going to be key. So I'd encourage everybody, once it dries up and we get back in here, talk to your agronomist or retailer, whoever that may be, and just say, hey, was our planned burn down application, do we need aggressive on an adjuvant, whatever it may be. But when things dry back up, these fields are getting green enough and big enough that we're going to have to get pretty aggressive with our mixes too. Not to mention we got the water hemp summer annuals coming on too. That'll be emerging as well, and that already have. So that's, I guess, what I'd say from that standpoint.
Yeah, Derek, I think to me, that's one of the things that gives me pause for concern a little bit is just, yeah, things are way ahead of normal heat unit wise. So water hemp is ahead of normal, as you should probably expect, and pretty prevalent, at least down here in a lot of fields where either the fall chemistry is wore out or maybe there's not been anything applied yet. But that water hemp is coming. It's coming relatively quickly. You start looking at heat units, we're like 462 heat units ahead of normal from the first of the year, which is crazy, far ahead of normal. Like it would explain why things are way ahead. So yeah, my thing is you got to take care of that water hemp the first time. So to your point, if we were normally going in here, we were ahead of water hemp germination, and we could go in with some lighter post-emergent chemistry and heavier on the residual side. Well, it's like now the water hemp is coming, it's coming thick. You got one shot here. We want to start out clean. So you better slam it pretty hard with a good post-emergence program and a good residual just to layer down to stop the water hemp that's yet to come and to kill the water hemp that's up. And I guess, Rodney, just to flip it back to you, I mean, maybe what are some things folks need to think about if you're got a field where you've got water hemp that's already emerged? How do I handle that?
Yeah, so you want a good knockdown in on that water hemp, and to your point, um, this first flush, we know there'll be another flush. So here, it's a good and a bad. The good is it's up, and so we see it and we can get it killed. The bad is we know there's another flush. So we have to make sure that we're using a good chemistry to take it out, plus residual. The other thing I want to throw in there, up here we use a lot of ryegrass for cover crop, And if it hasn't been terminated yet, it is getting very large. It's getting very lush. It's getting very thick. That concerns me. A couple reasons. And one is we got to use a high rate of Roundup and some other things to kill that, terminate it. And it's hard to do that in one pass especially if you think you're going to put a residual with, because it is so thick. The other thing is we're harboring a lot of moths are laying eggs. There's a lot of bug situation and heavy cover crop like that. And then I go to henbit. We've got a lot of purple henbit just taking over, matting out really good. And so we've got some scenarios building that now's the time when we can go. We have to make sure we've got the chemistry in there and the adjuvant. Derek you both hit on the adjuvant. I had a conversation yesterday with a grower that the adjuvant load, we up the adjuvant load, we up the Roundup rate. We did not deviate from the plan, but we upped the rates because of the weed spectrum, the timing, the heat units, everything that we have talked about is advanced. And so we may only get one shot at this to take care of it. Now we know there's other flushes and all that, but now's the time to make sure that everything's at the full label rates, full adjuvant rates. And even if the nice thing in this time of year, we can go MSO, we can go hot on oils because we're not worried about burning a crop or anything. So I would err on going oils right now on the burn downs.
Yeah, good points, Rodney. You hit on a lot of potential topics there that we can dive into. Maybe just to finish off that water hemp piece, though, I would say just a couple things I would mention. You're 100% right. I mean, be sure we're not cutting back on rates. We need to be utilizing sufficient rates to take out water hemp. And I think about examples like 2,4-D. I mean, you have to follow the plant backs, et cetera, that they call for. But where you might have gotten by with a lighter rate of 2,4-D this time of year, most years, you better up that thing. If you got water hemp out there, you want to totally take it out. So you don't want to skimp on rates. To your point, Rodney, yeah, the adjuvants, you definitely want to go way. And like you said, you can get pretty aggressive because there's no crop up when it comes to oil, et cetera. Be sure that you're utilizing AMS and plenty of it, especially like what you said, those Roundup applications. And I'll just mention too, the fall herbicides have done their job. Fields are remarkably clean, but their total focus is to take care of winter annual weed pressure and to provide you with a timely, with a clean seed bed at planting if we're planting in April or at this point in time. But, we're 400 and some heat units ahead of normal. Those programs are not built to hold back water hemp. They are long since gone. So that means now that water hemp's emerging early, we can't just assume that field from a fall chemistry is totally clean. Like Derek said, there's a lot of small stuff that's coming.
Now, Nick, I would say you just kind of alluded to it, but these types of years are what those fall programs are built for, where we warm up early and the winter annuals take off early, and we might not have time to get in there for burn down and things like that. I mean, I'm a fan of a fall program regardless of the year type deal, but this type of year where we got all that early emergence, again, they worked and they've done their job, but this is the type of year that they're even built for and where they're most successful. And so, yeah, you got weeds out there, but that does not mean that the fall application was not impactful.
Yeah, you're spot on. I just want people to realize water hemp's coming. Like it doesn't matter if it had fall chemistry down, it's coming. But to your point, what the winter annuals are gone, and we can actually get penetration on those water hemp seedlings, and we can take care of things way better, like you said. Now that we have applied a fall chemistry, um,
A couple other things I'm noticing, guys, since we are advanced on heat units, there's some weeds that we haven't talked about for a long time because we went away from yellow chemistries, and that's cocklebur, Jimson weed, lamb's quarter, giant rags, even germinated. So when you get looking, there's a lot of these summer annuals have already started first flush. So very critical that you're on, you have labeled rates, your adjuvant, all of that, because you're going to have a very, very good, easier time of killing that first flush, which is a good thing before you plant the crop.
Well, and if you're in an area like me, that has a lot of wet areas, I guess if you're in a no-till situation, prioritize what needs to happen whenever it finally dries out and we can do field work. We're talking a lot about weeds here and them all coming up. And I know as that date gets later, we're going to want to plant, but the priority might be to get these weeds taken care of when it finally does dry out. Because I think Nick said it and Rodney, we get one shot to get after something or at least get ahead of something like water hemp. And so if you're in an area that's wet, it dries out. If you can't do both, it'd be hard for me not to take care of the weeds first. It's going to be harder to do in crop.
Good points, guys. I think one thing going along the lines of the winter annuals, et cetera, Rodney kind of alluded to it, but just insect pest wise, like insect pest pressure is pretty intense this year. It's ahead of normal. And we shouldn't be surprised with the heat units we've been cranking up, but a lot of black cutworm moth catches in Missouri. They continue to climb up. If you start looking through some of the predicted cutting dates, a lot of them are like towards the first part of May, which means we might intersect with small corn and big cutworms, which is usually not a good thing. A lot of woolly fields out there, as Derek alluded to, those are have attracted the moths. That's where they lay the eggs. Those are the most at-risk fields. I keep my eye on those. And then army worms, those moth catches have been huge. We talked in depth about that last time, so I don't need to go in depth again, but I'll just say, yeah, keep your eye on wheat, keep your eye on any merged corn, grasses. They'll even feed on soybeans if they don't have another preferred host, or as Rodney alluded to, if they get landed in a cover crop and then the cover crop gets terminated, they can move over to the beans too. So I especially keep an eye on it. Wheat, especially, they can do a lot of damage and devour a flag leaf pretty quick, and that flag leaf is a lot of the yield. I mean, a lot. Some folks might say 75% of the yield. So I'd say those are some pests to keep your eyes on, to be watchful about. I do want to go back quickly to the cover crop. So Rodney kind of alluded to it a little bit, talking about termination of cover crops, mentioning about them harboring some of the pests. I guess as we start getting into termination of those, a lot of at least in my geography, a lot of the early termination before planting has already happened. So we're kind of outside that window. This would be more termination if we're planting green, in my opinion. For us, we're kind of at that knee high or so stage of cereal rye, and I don't like to kill that unless I got the crop planted once we reach that height and on up. But I guess what are some things, guys, we need to think about if we're going to terminate this in crop in terms of products, adjuvants, et cetera, especially namely when it comes to rye or wheat cover crop for us?
We want to make sure on the rye that we're full and eat as much Roundup as we can. I would even probably throw some other grass compound in there to make darn sure we get it terminated. And I would probably throw some cheap insecticide while I'm in there, because we know there's bugs in there. The other thing, if I'm following the rye with soybeans, I'm okay with, if you, Derek said, we would much rather you take care of the weeds and terminate that cover crop ahead of planting. But if you think you have to plant before you spray, I'm okay with putting the beans in before terminating the rye, but I'm not on corn. Corn does not like competition. You got to remember that's a grass, rye's a grass, and so is corn. And so you're competing for nutrients and everything else. And so if you're going to plant corn following that, I want you to make darn sure you've terminated the rye before you plant the corn crop. And I don't mean spray it today, plant it tomorrow. I want 3-4 days ahead of, to let that rye get that chemistry in and start that termination process before you go in and disturb it, because when you start disturbing it, now you've injured that plant, and it's going to take longer to kill it. So make sure on that situation that you have AMS, you've got MSO, you've got everything in there, plus heavy rates of Roundup and others to make sure you take that down.
Yeah, that's what Rodney. What I my big thing there that I would just reiterate it is be patient. Again, mechanical damage. These cover crops are a cover crop, but they're essentially a weed at this point that we're trying to kill, right? And just like other weeds, where I guess I see guys fail a lot with termination, is not being patient enough to allow the chemistry to work and get complete death before we go in there. And then now we got the crop planted and we're still trying to go clean up cover crop type deal. So, but I think everything else you were spot on there.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit on it. I don't need to belabor it. I would just mention too, when you start adding there are some products that can be antagonistic to Roundup that you could add in, whether that's atrazine, metribuzin, even Valor, sulfentrazone. Those kind of products can have some antagonism with glyphosate. Not, a cereal rye, it doesn't seem like it takes a lot to kill it, but wheat, as it gets more mature, and we have some guys that do cover crop wheat, it can be more difficult to kill. So, if you're in less than ideal conditions, maybe it makes sense to drop those other products out and go at it with the
Yeah,
glyphosate.
I agree
The
with you,
other
Nick. Now I will say a general statement. A lot of these antagonisms, this is a general statement because there's several that exist, but a lot of them can be overcome by using full rates, full
Yeah,
AMS loads, full adjuvant loads. So just one more reason besides the weed pressure that we're seeing right now to not skimp on rates and things like that, because some of these chemistries don't always play well. And those antagonisms come out typically whenever we're starting to cut rates.
yeah, that's the point I was going to make too, and glad you jumped in there. But if we're utilizing plenty of AMS and we're utilizing plenty of glyphosate, then it overcomes a lot of that. It's just when we get adverse conditions, and like you said, we're not utilizing the right rates or we're not utilizing the right amount of AMS that we can get ourselves in trouble there. Um, Pretty good shape from here on out. But if we weren't typically, if it was cooler or whatever, we'd want some temperatures up highs really. We'd really like to have in the 60s, but at least in the 50s, and definitely staying above freezing, ideally in the 40s on the low side. So I don't foresee us having a lot of issues there, but just mentioning that. I think Rodney mentioned the select and the clethodim and glyphosate thing. I mean, there is some data on cover crop wheat that it those two together, if you start getting into some pretty big wheat, those two together can have some more synergistic activity or totally take it out. But obviously, like you guys said, utilizing plenty of AMS and high Roundup rates or glyphosate rates can help take that out. I from a cover crop standpoint, I guess those are the things I really wanted to hit on. Um, and if you guys are good with it, I might flip back to wheat just real quick. You guys can add in. I know you probably don't have as much wheat as what we do down here, so you guys jump in wherever you want if you want to. I just want to make the comment that we have been 2 weeks ahead on wheat development all spring. That continues. South I-70, we've got flag leaves that are totally out. We're pushing closer to the boot stage. It looks like we'll be ready for head scab fungicide in 10 days or so, depending on what those future temperatures are. North of 70, we got flag leaves most of the way out. We might be applying head scab fungicide in 14 days or so. That if we are applying before the 1st of May, that would be the earliest I've ever seen it in this geography, which just tells you how far ahead we currently are. Um, I
Well,
guess
and
just
with
a
these,
go ahead.
being so close to the head scab timing as well, with all the moisture and the heat that we're getting, um, that's definitely going to be conducive for disease development. So something to think about.
So that also brings another thought process in my head. Oh, I have hardly any wheat, but I'm thinking double crop. So if you're that advanced, you want the best wheat you can, but you also want to make sure you take care of it. and then so you can come right back with a double crop, and that would what a better scenario, get that double crop beans earlier in, and chance of doing better with that double crop bean too.
Yeah, you're spot on, Rodney. I mean, I'm sure there will be a slowdown, and it won't happen this way. But right now, the pace it's on for an early harvest. Um, it could be for some of the guys that dry. It could be early June at the pace it's going. But I don't know. Something will probably come along. It does most years and slow things down. A cool period. But you're spot on, man. If things progressing the way they are, that can make for some early double crop beans. And my point on the whole wheat thing is just moral of the story. Don't get caught napping based on the calendar. Some guys have already done that based on nitrogen applications, being out there too late. Like this wheat is well ahead of normal. So just because you normally do head scab on May 10th, most years, it may be a hell of a lot earlier than that if we keep this pace going.
The head
But
scab timing is a 5 to 7 day window, right? So
it an ideal, like an optimal window, if you wanted to hit it optimal, you got about 24 hours. Now, you almost never hit it that perfect. But yes, to your point, you got as much, the data says as much as 5 days late. And it is actually, even though some labels like Miravisace say you can apply at heading, all the data says that if you apply at flowering, it's the best control. And if you're going to miss that window, you're better to miss a few days late than a few days early, because the control is better to be late than to be too early. But yeah, it is a really, if you want optimal control out of the fungicide, it's a real tight window, but it's hard to hit that spot on. Well, guys, appreciate the conversation and all the points. Any last topics you guys want to add?
Yeah, I will say in my geography, we're forecasted for a frost Sunday night, and so here we are, headed towards the end of April, and have a frost event. So remember, that's going to shock the weeds, and so we need to let them recover. Now we are going to probably have some more rain, and so that'll keep us out. But then we'll also have a Mother's Day forecast for a cold temp. So just be cognizant of that. Yes, we are far advanced, but we still have a couple more cold events, and that we got to be cognizant of that also.
yeah, I guess my final notes, I agree with everything Rodney said. That would apply to my area as well. My final notes is repetitive on, if you do have moisture, if you're in an area that's getting a lot of rain, make sure we're not rushing back in. We talked about getting one chance to control water hemp. Well, we got one chance to plant a good corn crop too. So we're still plenty early enough. No need to rush back in, but put priority at this point on taking care of the weeds, because they're going to be much harder to battle in season.
Good points, guys. And Rodney, you can keep that frost up your way. That would be a bad day for the wheat down this way.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
you guys' time. Appreciate everyone listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Into Novus Knowledge. Please reach out to your Into agronomist if we can help in any way. Join us next time for more in-depth agronomic advice.